just wanna. Can you see myself? Can you see myself? Can you see myself?
Towering over everything it passes, it strides through the woods as little more than a shadow. It has exceptionally large shoulders and walks like a heavy, muscled beast, leaving giant footprints. Over the last 2 centuries, there have been thousands of people that have claimed to see a giant, hairy beast lurking in the forests of North America. All 50 U.S. states and all 10 Canadian provinces have reported sightings or found tracks of this mysterious animal. Over the decades, these claims have been the root of many legends. In the dense timber of the Pacific Northwest, where the animal is most commonly recorded, these legends have been immortalized and virtually brought to life. This phantom creature has been known by many names: hairy ghost, ancient devil, Sasquatch, and more recently, Bigfoot. The lure of the unknown has led many scholars and adventurers to the trail of Bigfoot. Over the years, the creature has been examined and exploited in many ways, from in-depth magazine essays, to campy television appearances, to serious scientific inquiries. Through it all, one question still remains. Does such an animal exist, remaining undiscovered by modern science? Or is Bigfoot a hoax of gargantuan proportions that has continued for hundreds of years?
The things that people are seeing and that have been reported for centuries are to me some large kind of hominid form, a primate, unknown, unclassified, living in the Pacific Northwest. Now, if they're not this, then we're looking at something else, which is, to give the skeptics something to talk about, what we're looking at then is we're looking at a man in a fursuit, okay? He's been doing it for 200 years. Perhaps he's some part of some secret society, and they jump out on the road and go boo to people in the dark. It's not very plausible. It doesn't add up.
The oldest account of Bigfoot was recorded in 986 A.D. by Leif Erikson and his men. During their first landing in the New World, the Norsemen wrote about monsters that were horribly ugly, hairy, swarthy, and with great black eyes. But the legend of Bigfoot existed in North America long before the white man arrived. The zealous Indian tribes of British Columbia called the creature Sasquatch, meaning wild man of the woods. Among the legends are the stories of the giant men of Mount Shasta and the stick men of the Washington Mountains. Here in the Hoopa Valley, located in the Klamath Mountains of Northern California, Bigfoot sightings are common. For hundreds of years, the Hoopa Indians have told stories about what they call Oma. Jimmy Jackson has lived in the Hoopa Valley for 85 years and knows the legend of Bigfoot well.
My mother lived to be 105 years old, and she's told me a lot of things about Bigfoot, you know. It's a person that takes care of the mountains, nothing around in the valley. He's out in the mountain, and he's the boss. And you never see him. You never see him.
I think it's real possible that something like that does exist. All the legends, the Hoopa legends, seem to me to be based on some incidents and happenings. The Hoopa word for Bigfoot means boss of the woods, so it had to be something pretty domineering.
This is the Columbia River in Oregon. Native Americans lived along this river and relied on it for their survival. Along its banks, archaeologists have uncovered mysterious carvings of what could be a Sasquatch. The heads are just under human size and are carved to represent what is clearly a monkey or ape-like face. The prehistoric natives that carved the heads had a knowledge of what an ape's face looked like. How they gained that knowledge remains a mystery to modern science.
Why would people be interested in making a carving of something that they've never seen? Well, I mean, we have imaginative things, but they're obviously imaginative. They don't have a series of traits that seem to fit other descriptions. Why are all the descriptions of Sasquatch the same?
Probably because they've seen Sasquatch. We believe that it's the spiritual leaders, certain people are called on to do that type of artwork, that type of drawing, or make that kind of a statement, say 15,000 years ago.
Along with the stone carvings, the Native Americans in this area produced other unexplained mysteries.
This one basket interests me a lot because of all the Klickitat baskets I've seen, this has a creature on it that is just you cannot explain. There are women, there are horses, but still there is this figure and it's repeated around the basket. You know, who knows, maybe it's Sasquatch.
As pioneers headed west, more and more sightings of Bigfoot were recorded by white men. In 1840, E. Walker, a missionary to the Spokane Indians in Washington, wrote a fascinating letter. Walker describes a race of giants that live in the mountains.
They hunt and do all their work at night. They frequently come in the night and steal their salmon from their nets and eat them raw. But the people are awake. They always know when they are coming very near by their strong smell, which is most intolerable. E. Walker.
In 1884, near the town of Yale, British Columbia, a strange creature was captured that some called a young Bigfoot. Nicknamed the Jacko by his captors, it was said to be something of a gorilla type, standing about 4 feet 7 inches in height and weighing 127 pounds. Mysteriously, Jacko disappeared from a transport train and was never seen again. Even a United States president was captivated by the Bigfoot mystique. President Teddy Roosevelt, an avid big game hunter, wrote in his book, The Wilderness Hunter, about a very strange animal. He described the beast as walking on 2 feet and uttering harsh, sinister sounds. Some believe the president went to his grave convinced that the mythical creature truly existed. However, it wasn't until 1958 that Bigfoot gained worldwide recognition. That summer, a road crew working in northwestern California repeatedly found very large human-like footprints. The creature that made the tracks reportedly tossed around 300-pound fuel drums. The work crew nicknamed the nightcrawler Bigfoot. Foreman Jerry Toole made a cast of one of the tracks. The resulting Humboldt Times newspaper story was picked up by the AP Newswire, and Bigfoot was famous. In 1967, Bigfoot hunter Roger Patterson went on an expedition in Northern California to search for the creature. He returned with evidence that shocked the world. In 1967, in a clearing similar to this, the most controversial sighting and documentation of a Bigfoot occurred. On October 20th of that year, Roger Patterson and Robert Gimlin were in the area searching for Bigfoot evidence. Patterson had a history of intense interest in this creature and had recently published a book on the subject. Armed with a small movie camera, the two were on horseback when they rode around a large obstacle in the creek bed and spotted what they thought was a Sasquatch. Upon seeing the creature, Patterson's horse reared and fell over backward upon him. He quickly steadied himself, retrieved his 16mm movie camera, and recorded these shaking but amazing images. The resulting 952 frames of color film are the most viable evidence of Sasquatch's existence ever recorded.
Its appearance was just a large humanoid creature walking like a human being. When we came upon the creature, it was standing still by the creek. It immediately turned around and started to walk away. There is no way that this could ever be falsified or any man could be in a suit because of the movement of the muscle underneath the hair.
If the creature Roger Patterson claimed to film does in fact inhabit the dark forest of North America, what is it? Is it an elaborate hoax, the missing link, or a species that has yet to be discovered?
We have an awful lot of evidence that is taken to indicate that there is a large bipedal animal out there.
Grover Krantz is a professor of anthropology at Washington State University. He has been studying Bigfoot for over 20 years and is a world authority on cryptozoology, the study of hidden animals.
If this thing is real, this is extremely pertinent to my field. So I would be very unscientific to simply ignore something like this. If there is not an animal 6 to 8 feet tall, then you have to explain all this evidence with some other method or methods. And that becomes absolutely incredible and cumbersome, just impossible, really.
Krantz believes that Sasquatch are descendants of Gigantopithecus blacki, a long-extinct Southeast Asian gorilla that he feels migrated to North America via the Bering Straits land bridge.
This is what the Gigantopithecus skull would have looked like. Now, this, of course, makes a gorilla look decidedly small. And that's our comparison.
The general description of Bigfoot gives credibility to Krantz's theory. According to hundreds of sightings, the mysterious creature walks upright in the same manner as Homo sapiens, with a slight slouch. They swing their arms back and forth as humans do. Perhaps the strongest evidence to support Krantz's theory is the movement of the creature in the Patterson film.
One of the things it did when it turned that was rather interesting is that it turned its head and chest at the same time, very much like an ape does. Now, if I hold myself up in a proper human pose, you'll find that not only is my mouth higher than my shoulders, my chin is higher than my shoulder. And if I turn, my jaw does not run into my shoulder, it can go right over it. An ape is not built that way. An ape is built like this, only much deeper jaw. When it turns to the side, its jaw runs into its shoulder. If the ape is going to look farther than running into its shoulder, it either has to tip the head way back and look over. If you look at them in the zoos, you'll see them doing that. Or it turns the head and the shoulders as well. Well, that's what the creature that Patterson filmed was doing.
On average, the size of a Bigfoot is about 7 feet 8 inches, weighing about 800 pounds, much larger than a human, bear, or gorilla. The features of the animal fall somewhere between that of a gorilla and human. The face is quite ape-like, but does not protrude at the mouth like the apes. If Bigfoot is in fact a descendant of Gigantopithecus blacki, then it may be related to yet another legendary creature in Asia, the abominable snowman, or Yeti, as it is called by the natives. For centuries, there have been reports of wild men and snowmen in Asia. However, the most overwhelming evidence of Bigfoot's existence are the hundreds of footprint casts that have been made. The most remarkable print was found in 1982. A U.S. Forest Service patrolman claims he encountered an 8-foot-tall Sasquatch bounding down a logging spur road. Casts made of the footprints produced a startling discovery. They contain highly detailed dermal ridges, the equivalent to fingerprints, that withstood the scrutiny of forensic experts.
I would consider this and several other tracks with dermal ridges to be some of the most definitive evidence that's ever been found. It's on par with the Patterson film for solid evidence.
Unusual hair is another type of evidence that is sometimes found after a Bigfoot sighting. These Sasquatch hunters found strands while on an expedition. The hair was analyzed by Dr. Sterling Bunnell, a biologist from Berkeley, California. He determined the hair to be of an unknown species. Dr. Bunnell wrote, "It is clearly related to the human-chimpanzee-gorilla group, but is distinguishable from each of these." The sound you hear is what some experts claim to be a Bigfoot scream, recorded in the state of Washington by a group of campers in 1971. It is regarded as the highest quality audio of the creature ever captured. This rare tape recording was analyzed at the International Center for Gibbon Studies in Southern California.
The gibbon has a territorial call announcing to its neighboring gibbons where they reside, and this is the area that their food is in and that they live in. That one sounds more realistic of a hominid's territorial call to me. It's a possibility it could be made by a human, or it could be of a hominid, an ancestor of a human. So it's a possibility it is realistic.
According to Alan Mutnick's findings, these gibbons may be related to a hidden creature that stalks the forests of northern America. Photographs are another form of evidence that is used to document a Bigfoot sighting. The following pictures were taken by various amateur photographers, each claiming to have captured an image of Sasquatch.
Chris, give me a call. 352-7000 or 1-800-BIGFOOT. It sounds
This
like
is the headquarters for the Bigfoot Research Project. Working under the auspices of the Academy of Applied Science of Concord, New Hampshire, the project is presently undertaking a 5-year study of the Bigfoot phenomena in the Pacific Northwest. The primary objective of the research project is detection, contact, and communication. The project is gathering all existing information on Bigfoot, from historical reports dating back into the 1700s to recent claims of sightings and footprints. What makes this new search so exciting is that it's the first project to use sophisticated computers and high-grade sensor equipment in an effort to locate the mysterious creature.
So far, we're largely in experimental mode.
You might notice in the middle of your screen now a number of elk.
Our project is what we call a benign project. It's like some of the projects with whales and dolphins. Louder than that, much louder.
Peter Byrne is no stranger to Bigfoot. Once a big game hunter, he has spent the last 30 years trying to prove the existence of Sasquatch. One of his expeditions lasted 10 years in the icy Himalayan mountains of Nepal, searching for the Yeti.
We're against the idea of shooting one of these things. We think that would be criminal and quite wasteful to shoot it to prove that it exists. But we're dealing with an upright walking form, something that walks on two legs, and we're the only creatures on the face of the earth that walk on two legs. All of the apes are quadrupeds, they're knuckle walkers. And then people who've seen these things, who've looked at them with telescopic sights, with binoculars, have always said the same thing. It was a human face. It was a strangely human face. The sighting we had on the 10th of this month, the young couple involved, they both said that. The face was strangely human. It wasn't an ape face, it wasn't a gorilla. We might be dealing with an extremely primitive form of human being. And so to shoot one of these things, to attempt to shoot one, I think is very wrong.
Today, Peter Byrne is concentrating his efforts solely on trying to locate Bigfoot. In the past year, he's received information on over 400 sightings. Using the data he's collected, Byrne has charted the number of Bigfoot encounters during the past 100 years.
We're gathering all of the evidence. We're putting it into a computer. What we're looking for is patterns. One day, perhaps 6 months from now, perhaps a year from now, when we have those patterns, we'll start to work on them with our technology and the technology that's available to us.
By examining all of the data, Peter hopes to discover some type of a pattern in the sightings. For example, some believe that the creature migrates.
They say that it comes from California and walks up to Canada. They come up, like, they migrate, walk, and that's why they're seen so many different places, you know. And that's what I heard from my father.
We've heard of the possibility of migration, yes, and we support that possibility. But we look upon it as, right now, as a nomadic form of migration. We don't know how it relates. We don't know how it relates to seasons. We don't know how it relates to food supply. This is what we hope our computer will tell us.
While migrating, the Sasquatch could live off the abundant supply of food that the Pacific Northwest offers. Wild berries are considered by many Bigfoot researchers to be the staple of the creature's diet. During spawning season, many of the rivers overflow with salmon, which the Bigfoot is also reported to eat. This photo captures an image of what some scientists claim to be a nest used by a migrating Bigfoot. Traveling in small groups, the animal is believed to have a complex social order.
We have an awful lot of bits of information about the social relationships among the Sasquatches. The best view now is that they live in small groups of one male and 3, 4, sometimes 5 females, and that this is the breeding community. Then as they have offspring, the young females grow up and replace the adult females as they are dying. The young males grow up and they are driven out of the group by the adult, who will tolerate no competition. So then these young males, I call them rogue males, will then just wander the countryside in suitable environments, growing up, getting stronger, looking for another social group where they can perhaps have a conflict with the dominant male there and hopefully take over. Now, as to the total population, I've worried about this a good many times, and I'm making now a flying guess that there's, in the Pacific Northwest of the U.S. and adjacent Canada, somewhere in the ballpark of 2,000 of them.
How does he know this? How does he know they have a social grouping? How does he know that they have any more intelligence than a grizzly bear, or any more intelligence than a coyote, or any of the bears?
While skeptics do exist, Peter Byrne and others believe there is already enough viable evidence to support Bigfoot's existence. In 1961, Byrne, responding to a Bigfoot sighting, took a photo of a large footprint on a road in Bluff Creek. 6 years later, at the same location, Roger Patterson shot his famous film.
We have this picture of a footprint from Bluff Creek in 1960, and it's a 14.5-inch footprint. And about 6 months ago I was looking at it, and I was looking at some pictures of footprints in Dr. Grover Kranz's book, and this looked very similar to one of them. So I sent it to him and I said, do you think this is actually the same as one of the footprints in your book? And the footprints in his book were photographs of plaster casts of the 1967 film Creature. He called me and said he was 99% certain that they were identical. And the interesting thing about this is that what we have is a photograph of a footprint made by the creature in that film 7 years before it was photographed. And I think that's very significant.
But I've been all over to there, and there's something up there that ain't no bear, and it's big enough to pick up 200-300-pound pieces of logs and move them without claw marks.
On the day when our cameras were visiting with Peter Byrne and his staff, a phone call came in from a person claiming to have had a sighting. Without missing a beat, Byrne and his assistant immediately investigate.
We have a theory, and it's speculative only. We have a theory that they hide their tracks because There must be quite a few of them, up to within reasonable limits. But there are so few footprints found, so very few. So we think that there's a possibility they might know enough to know that the one sign they can leave behind them that will lead a man to them, a man with a gun perhaps, is footprints, and so they don't make any.
He might spend a little time, but he always is able to identify.
Something has picked this up and put it there. Because it's been lying here, you can see where it's been lying there. Somebody or something has picked that up, and it's pretty heavy. This is what we found in the hill. We found these gouge marks in the hill. Not definite footprints, but where something big and heavy had powered itself up the hill, something weighing a lot. We found one between the trees there, and then several others.
Yeah, Mobile 1 to base.
Base, go ahead.
Yeah, we have deer prints in the dust out here. It looks as though a deer walked about 20, 30 feet away from the ground sensor. And that's what triggered it, and that's what the signal was. Over.
Acknowledged. Well, maybe we'll get him next time.
For over 30 years, Peter Byrne has interviewed hundreds of people claiming to have seen the creature. Though many of the reports have been false alarms or come up short, as in this case, Byrne has recorded detailed information from a cross-section of the population. The following drawing by artist Brad Yates is a compilation of the descriptions gathered by Byrne and his research.
Its appearance was just a large humanoid creature walking like a human being.
His eyes were small, black, and round.
And this big black object was walking away from me, walking into the timber.
None of his hair, even on his neck, was longer than an inch.
I would say at least 6 feet tall and around 500-600 pounds probably.
Right, I'm recording right now. If you can see that little thing, it looks like maybe an eye. Holy it's looking right at me.
Yep.
Holy it's a Sasquatch, man. I got it on tape. I can't believe this is looking right back at us.
This home video, shot in Northern California by 2 Bigfoot hunters, was obtained exclusively by Ancient Mysteries. On October 12, 1992, Darrell Owen and Scott Harriet ventured into the woods armed only with their video cameras. Their goal? To capture an image of Bigfoot.
I was trying to focus with my camera, and due to the fact that the foliage was so thick, I had to turn the autofocus off. And then I was looking through the bushes, and I seen a beige creature from the waist up, his head, his shoulder.
We encountered something. It was about 35, 40 feet away, and there 2 eyes were peering out low down in the brush. I thought maybe it was a reflectivity of something else, but after 30 seconds, the head started swaying back and forth.
And I'm looking at maybe a 7 or 8 foot tall, beige, gorilla-looking man.
But we saw a bright red eye glow.
But I know after looking at it for 29 seconds, I started to cry, and I could not hold the camera anymore.
This guy was seeing something, and I didn't want to see it at that point. I've been interested in the Sasquatch phenomena, but I didn't want to see what he was seeing because it was pretty creepy.
It's right through there. He's looking right at us. I had him on tape, man. I see it.
After shooting the video, Darrell Owen had his tape professionally enhanced. These laser copies are the result.
And this is her kneecaps and her legs and her toes. And then on this picture, you can't see the eyes, but the eyes are right here. And then on this one, with her knees this way, you can see her toes are right here.
Even with this new evidence, most scientists are still skeptical about Bigfoot's existence.
The idea that they do exist cannot withstand scientific inquiry. Let's call them UWOs, unidentified walking objects, or unidentified swimming objects, or unidentified flying objects. I don't know what they are. We all see things that sometimes are really not there. I have experienced it myself, being a woodsman for many, many years in the mountains, in very primitive country. And I have seen things that startle me, and I don't know what they really are.
Some people are a little bit over-eager and over-interpret what they see. And if they're thinking Sasquatches and they see something that isn't, they may interpret it as a Sasquatch. People tend to see what they want to see.
To find out exactly what Darrell Owen and Scott Harriet saw on the afternoon of October 12, 1992, the Ancient Mysteries production team took the videotape to Fleet Street Pictures, a commercial post-production facility located in Santa Monica, California. Using sophisticated video equipment, the Fleet Street editors were able to manipulate and expand the images. After tedious hours of pixel enhancement, the editors reached a startling conclusion. Scott Harriet and Darrell Owen did in fact videotape some sort of being in the woods of Northern California. Is this image the face of a Bigfoot, or is it just a mixture of shadows and leaves playing tricks on the imagination?
I am a firm believer of Bigfoot. I've seen one, I've experienced it, I've smelled it, I've lived it. It scared me to death. I believe they exist. The way things are coming together, the way the sightings have been happening, sooner or later they're going to find one.
Whether or not a Bigfoot is found remains to be seen. However, there are many other animals that exist today that were once thought to be silly myths. The mountain gorilla, for example, had long been known to the inhabitants of Rwanda as a huge, dark, hairy, man-like beast that swung through the treetops, emitting a fearful cry. Other examples include the pygmy hippopotamus, the snow leopard, and the giant panda. All these animals, from the far corners of the world, existed only as myths until they were discovered by explorers. Perhaps the most dramatic discovery came in 1938, when a South African deep-sea fisherman pulled in a very strange fish, a type he had never seen before. However, the scientists who were brought in to examine it had seen it before in fossils of the Devonian period. The fish, known as a coelacanth, had been presumed extinct for 60 million years.
But it turned out that the people had been occasionally catching these coelacanth fishes and eating them, and it was a perfectly normal thing to them. They had no idea that the scientists would be surprised. But the first one the scientists ever saw in 1938 just about blew off the lid of paleontology. So this was one that was well known from the fossil record until it was discovered in the real world.
The question still remains, does a Bigfoot exist in the real world? And if it does, why hasn't one been found? There are possible explanations. First, the geography and vastness of the terrain being searched. Much of the Pacific Northwest is highly inaccessible and full of dense timber.
The Pacific Northwest here, to give you an example of its size and its ability to hide things, has 73 aircraft lost from Northern California to Alaska since World War II. Lost, and that's an official Federal Aviation Administration figure. It's not just a myth, it's not just a newspaper story.
Peter Byrne and other Bigfoot experts theorize that the creature is nocturnal and extremely shy, not likely to approach humans. They speculate that the animal is intelligent and has a strong sense of survival, realizing that its only danger is man. However, nothing less than a specimen, dead or alive, will convince skeptics that Sasquatch exist. But finding one may prove a tall order, because dying animals generally retreat to remote areas.
Probably the most commonly asked question is, if the Sasquatch is real, why don't we find their bones? Well, if bears are real, why don't we find their bones? I've talked to many hunters, many game guides, conservation people, ecology students and everything, and asked them for how many remains of dead bears have you found that died a natural death? And over my 20 years of inquiry, my grand total of naturally dead bears is 0. Now, with the best population estimates we can make, there's at least 100 bears out there for every one Bigfoot. And we haven't found the first bear yet. While we would very much like to find the remains of a naturally dead Sasquatch, the chance is just simply so remote as not to even seriously think about it.
You meet people who lived here 50 years, much longer than me. They've never seen a dead cougar, never seen a dead bear. When something dies, it's eaten by other animals, mostly by bears, by coyotes, by ravens. And when you get down to things like horn and teeth and toenails, those are eaten by porcupines. In other words, there's a perfect disposal system. So when one of these things dies, it's quite possibly eaten immediately by other animals. There's also the possibility that they might bury their dead and then hide the burial places. That's a possibility.
Welcome to the town that is called the gateway to Bigfoot country, Willow Creek, California. More sightings have been reported in this small community than anywhere in the world. Al Hodgson is the owner of the local hardware store and has been studying Bigfoot for over 30 years. Al remembers well the first time he found a footprint.
I found a track quite a ways back in the creek. I mean, I had to go through brush and everything else to get there. And here I find a little bend in the creek like this, and water's here and water's over here. And what he's done, he stepped on this little peninsula out in here, sand peninsula, and there's one single track there, very old. There's pine needles and everything in it, but very clearly a Bigfoot track. And that pretty much convinced me that, hey, maybe there is something going on here.
In 1976, at this bus stop just outside of Willow Creek, Jason and Jeff Omby found an amazing 18-inch long footprint in the mud. A cast of the print was made by the boy's aunt, Deborah Jones.
It looked like something big had gone through this perfect mud puddle just like that and went right onto the pavement. And the mud puddle itself was semi-dried up, but just enough to take a 18-inch cast, about 3 inches deep.
Some people accused the kids of making it themselves, but they couldn't because it was about 3.5 inches in the ground, that footprint. There was no way that they could have made that footprint.
In Willow Creek, Bigfoot has taken on celebrity status and has loaned his image to golf courses, hotels, and lumber mills. The local residents get so excited about Bigfoot that on Labor Day weekend every year, they hold the Bigfoot Days Parade in celebration. Residents of Willow Creek all have their own opinion on the reality of Bigfoot's existence.
I've never seen any sign of him. Hope I don't.
You can't really say whether I believe him or not. I'd have to see it, but I won't say that I don't.
And by golly, old Bigfoot come along and lifted the vehicle back up on the road, and we got back to Arcata.
I saw him going behind some trees, so we ran home.
Sure, we believe in Bigfoot, but he's just Elvis in a furry suit.
Bigfoot mania is not just limited to Willow Creek. The mythical creature has been the star of tabloids for years. Sasquatch also appeared in an episode of the television series The $6 Million Man. Bigfoot has starred in his own movie, Harry and the Hendersons. While the commercialization of Bigfoot is often done in a light-hearted manner, for some it's serious business. In Skamania County, Washington, hunting Bigfoot is actually a crime. In 1969, following an outbreak of Sasquatch sightings and footprint discoveries, the Board of County Commissioners passed the world's first Sasquatch Protection Ordinance. Killing a Bigfoot in Skamania carries a $10,000 fine and 5 years in prison. But wounding or killing a Bigfoot may prove difficult, according to Craig Carpenter, a Mohawk Indian and mystic.
He is a spirit, and he can materialize or dematerialize at will. And he does it. There's much testimony to that. People have shot him. He'd scream and holler and fall down. They try to follow the blood trail. The blood trail peters out. After a while, even the tracks peter out. He just dematerializes. There's reports, reliable reports, of him walking in the wintertime on a snowy field. In the middle of the field, his tracks just disappear. So it's a super magic man. There's nobody more magical than Bigfoot that I know of.
With all of the evidence presented, it's hard for many not to believe that there's something out there. Thousands of eyewitness accounts, hair samples, and footprints, and video footage are hard to ignore. Is Bigfoot an elaborate hoax, or the product of overactive imaginations? Or does an unidentified primate exist and yet remain undiscovered by modern science?
If we find one that's going to really turn anthropology upside down.
I wish they were there. If they were there, I wish we'd leave them alone. I wish we wouldn't study them and put them in jars and museums and look at them.
They exist. They're going to be here for a lot longer after we're gone. And to the disbelievers, there's going to be rather a large, hairy surprise one day when somebody finds one.
I think in all probability, though he cannot say absolutely for certain, that there was a Sasquatch 35 feet, 40 feet away from us.
It's either a man in a fur suit, it's either mass hallucination of some kind, or else I think it's an unknown primate.
I don't know. I couldn't tell you whether he is a live man or what he is, I don't know. But to us, he's a boss of the mountain. He's a boss of the mountain.
Bigfoot. The lure of the unknown has led many scholars and adventurers to the trail of Bigfoot. Over the years, the creature has been examined and exploited in many ways, from in-depth magazine essays to campy television appearances to serious scientific inquiries. Through it all, one question still remains. Does such an animal exist, remaining undiscovered by modern science? Or is Bigfoot a hoax of gargantuan proportions that has continued for hundreds of years?
The things that people are seeing and that have been reported for centuries are, to me some large kind of hominid form, a primate, unknown, unclassified, living in the Pacific Northwest. Now, if they're not this, then we're looking at something else, which is, I mean, to give the skeptics something to talk about, what we're looking at then is we're looking at a man in a fursuit, okay? He's been doing it for 200 years. Perhaps he's some part of some secret society, and they jump out on the road and go boo to people in the dark. It's not very plausible. It doesn't add up.
The oldest account of Bigfoot was recorded in 986 AD by Leif Erikson and his men. During their first landing in the New World, the Norsemen wrote about monsters that were horribly ugly, hairy, swarthy, and with great black eyes. But the legend of Bigfoot existed in North America long before the white man arrived. The zealous Indian tribes of British Columbia called the creature Sasquatch, meaning wild man of the woods. Among the legends are the stories of the giant men of Mount Shasta and the stick men of the Washington Mountains. Here in the Hoopa Valley, located in the Klamath Mountains of Northern California, Bigfoot sightings are common. For hundreds of years, the Hoopa Indians have told stories about what they call Oma. Jimmy Jackson has lived in the Hoopa Valley for 85 years and knows the legend of Bigfoot well.
My mother lived to be 105 years old, and she's told me a lot of things about Bigfoot. I just
Towering over everything it passes, it strides through the woods as little more than a shadow. It has exceptionally large shoulders and walks like a heavy, muscled beast, leaving giant footprints. Over the last 2 centuries, there have been thousands of people that have claimed to see a giant, hairy beast lurking in the forests of North America. All 50 U.S. states and all 10 Canadian provinces have reported sightings or found tracks of this mysterious animal. Over the decades, these claims have been the root of many legends. In the dense timber of the Pacific Northwest, where the animal is most commonly recorded, these legends have been immortalized and virtually brought to life. This phantom creature has been known by many names: Hairy Ghost, Ancient Devil, Sasquatch, and more recently,
carving of something that they've never seen. Well, I mean, we have imaginative things, but they're obviously imaginative. They don't have a series of traits that seem to fit other descriptions. Why are all the descriptions of Sasquatch the same?
Probably because they've seen Sasquatch. We believe that it's the spiritual leaders, certain people are called on to do that type of artwork, that type of drawing, or make that kind of a statement, say 15,000 years ago.
Along with the stone carvings, the Native Americans in this area produced other unexplained mysteries.
This one basket interests me a lot because of all the Klickitat baskets I've seen, this has a creature on it that is just you cannot explain. There are women, there are horses, but still there is this figure and it's repeated around the basket. You know, who knows, maybe it's Sasquatch.
As pioneers headed west, more and more sightings of Bigfoot were recorded by white men. In 1840, E. Walker, a missionary to the Spokane Indians in Washington.
You know, it's a person that takes care of the mountains. Nothing around in the valley. He's out in the mountain, and he's the boss. And you never see him. You never see him.
I think it's real possible that something like that does exist. All the legends, the Hoopa legends, seem to me to be based on some incidents and happenings. The Hoopa word for Bigfoot means boss of the woods, so it had to be something pretty domineering.
This is the Columbia River in Oregon. Native Americans lived along this river and relied on it for their survival. Along its banks, archaeologists have uncovered mysterious carvings of what could be a Sasquatch. The heads are just under human size and are carved to represent what is clearly a monkey or ape-like face. The prehistoric natives that carved the heads had a knowledge of what an ape's face looked like. How they gained that knowledge remains a mystery to modern science.
Why would people be interested in making a